It was suicide. In 1943, the 12 sailors aboard this 80-foot boat had one order: attack. Their target, a 1,700-ton steel destroyer. Their ship, plywood and glue. Why did the U.S. Navy send plywood coffins to fight steel leviathans? To understand this, we must go back to 1942, to Guadalcanal. The war in the Pacific had stalled for one reason: the Japanese controlled the night. This meant that as soon as the sun set, American bases and ships were defenseless. Every night, like clockwork, their fast destroyers, known as the Tokyo Express, sped down the Slot Strait. They delivered thousands of fresh soldiers and tons of supplies to the islands the Americans were trying to capture. The American big ship fleet was powerless. In the narrow, reef-filled straits, their cruisers and battleships were too slow and blind. Every attempt to intercept the Express at night ended in disaster. A paradox emerged. By day, American aviation completely dominated the skies. But as soon as the sun set, the islands belonged to the Japanese again. The U.S. was winning the war by day, but losing it by night. They needed a new type of weapon, someone who could fight in the dark, someone fast, stealthy, and, most importantly, someone they could afford to lose. The solution came not from admirals' offices, but from the 1930s boat races. It was the PT-class torpedo boat. Essentially, it wasn't a warship, but a racing boat with weapons bolted on. Instead of steel armor, its hull was made of 2 layers of plywood and mahogany. Instead of heavy cannons, 3 Packard V, 12 aircraft engines. Its main weapons were 4 torpedoes and heavy machine guns. The big Navy admirals hated them. They called them plywood coffins. And they were right. The boat had no armor. A direct hit from a 127mm destroyer shell evaporated it. But that's exactly why the boat was needed. It was a disposable weapon, cheap, fast, and if it sank, it was easily replaced. They were commanded by reservists, men like Lieutenant John F. Kennedy. They were given these fragile boats and one order: go into the darkness and stop the Tokyo Express. Their tactic was maritime guerrilla warfare. By day, they hid in the mangroves, camouflaged with branches. But at night, the hunt began. They went out in pairs, frozen in the dark, listening. Their mission wasn't a fight, it was to ambush. They waited until radar or a listener detected the target. And there it is, the destroyer. Discovery was death. Once the Japanese destroyer spotted them, it lit up its searchlights and opened fire with all guns. The PT boat had one answer: speed. Fire. Her torpedoes hit the water, and immediately, he escaped. The boat spun around, fleeing into the darkness. It didn't always work. The torpedoes were unreliable. Lieutenant Kennedy's PT-109 was cut in half. But the crews soon realized the main target wasn't the destroyers. The real victory was the supply hunt. They attacked the transport barges. They stormed the shallows where destroyers couldn't go and tore the Japanese transports apart with their machine guns. Every barge destroyed meant dozens of Japanese soldiers ashore would be left without food and ammo. And here, the mosquito finally bit. The Tokyo Express wasn't sunk. It just choked. The nightly PT boat attacks disrupted the entire Japanese supply system. Food, medicine, and ammunition stopped arriving. Tens of thousands of Japanese soldiers on the islands were cut off and died of starvation. The Mosquito Fleet proved a principle: sometimes, to defeat a giant, you don't need another giant. They weren't a fleet, they were a splinter. They were the plywood coffins that, against all logic, helped win the war in the Pacific.